The meatloaf was getting cold, but that seemed appropriate. Everything in our house had been cooling down for months, and tonight felt like the final frost. I watched my wife Natalie push peas around her plate like she was solving a puzzle. Her phone buzzed every 30 seconds, and each time she'd glance at it with this secretive little smile that made my stomach turn. We'd been married 8 years, and I knew all her expressions. This wasn't happiness. This was guilt wearing a mask. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. So, I said, cutting into the silence with my fork scraping against ceramic. How was your day designing logos for people who think Comic Sans is edgy? She didn't laugh. Usually my sarcasm at least earned me an eye roll. Tonight, nothing. Ethan, we need to talk. 4 words, 21 letters. The end of every marriage that ever mattered. I set down my fork and leaned back in my chair, studying her face. Natalie had always been beautiful in that effortless way that made other men stupid and other women jealous. Auburn hair that caught light like fire, green eyes that used to look at me like I was worth something. Tonight, those eyes were focused somewhere else entirely. Let me guess, I said. You've discovered yourself. You need space. It's not me, it's you. Or maybe it's both of us, but mostly me. Don't be an ass about this. I'm a systems analyst, Nat. I troubleshoot problems for a living, so when my wife sits down to dinner looking like she's about to confess to murder, I start running diagnostics. She took a breath that seemed to last forever. I ran into Danny at the coffee shop yesterday. Danny, her college boyfriend, the one who dumped her senior year to chase some blonde sorority girl to California, the one she'd cried about for months until I'd finally made her laugh again at a party where we'd both been drinking too much cheap beer. Fascinating, I said. Did you reminisce about all the ways he disappointed you? He's back in town, his marriage didn't work out. Her voice got softer, more careful. We talked for 3 hours. 3 hours about what? The good old days when he treated you like a backup plan? He's different now, older. He's learned from his mistakes. I felt something cold settle in my chest. And I think I'm falling for him again. The words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, the smile, the indication that this was some kind of sick joke. But Natalie just sat there, looking at me with a mixture of defiance and guilt that told me everything I needed to know. Well, I said finally, that's honest. She blinked. That's it? That's all you're going to say? What would you like me to say? That I'm shocked? I've been watching you check out of this marriage for months. At least now I know why. I thought you'd fight for me. Fight for you? I laughed, and it came out harder than I'd intended. Nat, you just told me you're in love with another man. What exactly am I supposed to fight? Your feelings, his charm, the fact that apparently 8 years of marriage means less to you than 3 hours of coffee shop nostalgia? She stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. You're being cruel. I'm being realistic. You want to go play house with Danny? Go ahead. I won't stand in your way. Just like that? Just like that. The truth was, it felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out everything that mattered, but I'd learned a long time ago that showing weakness only invited more pain. If Natalie wanted to throw away our life together for a man who'd already proven he couldn't commit to her, that said more about her than it did about me. She grabbed her purse from the counter. I'm going to stay at Lucy's tonight. I need to think. Take your time. I'll be here when you figure out what you want. After she left, I sat in the silence of our kitchen, staring at 2 plates of cold food and wondering when exactly I'd become the kind of man whose wife could fall out of love with him over coffee and pastries. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel, my oldest friend. Dinner tomorrow? It's been too long, I typed back. Perfect timing, yes. Maybe it was time to remind myself what it felt like to be around someone who actually wanted my company. Rachel's cottage sat on the edge of Mirror Lake like something from a postcard. She'd inherited it from her grandmother and turned it into a bed and breakfast that attracted couples looking for romantic getaways. The irony wasn't lost on me as I pulled into her driveway, my own marriage imploding, while I visited someone who made her living selling other people's happiness. She met me at the door with a smile that felt like sunlight after months of storm clouds. Rachel had always been beautiful, in a quieter way than Natalie. Dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, brown eyes that actually listened when you talked, laugh lines that came from genuine joy instead of social media poses. You look terrible, she said, pulling me into a hug. Thanks. You always know just what to say to make a man feel special. I'm serious. What's wrong? We settled on her back porch with beers and the kind of comfortable silence that only comes from 20 years of friendship. Rachel and I had grown up 3 houses apart, survived high school together, and somehow managed to stay close even after life pulled us in different directions. She'd been my best man when I married Natalie. Natalie had never quite forgiven her for that honor. Nat's leaving me, I said finally. Rachel nearly choked on her beer. What? When? Why? Last night. College boyfriend's back in town. Apparently 3 hours of conversation was enough to convince her that 8 years of marriage was a mistake. Danny Morrison? That pretentious ass who dumped her for what's-her-face? The very same. Rachel shook her head. I never understood what she saw in him. Even in college, he was the kind of guy who thought he was God's gift to women because he read poetry and wore vintage band t-shirts. Well, apparently his charm hasn't faded. And you're just going to let her go? I took a long drink of beer, tasting the bitterness. What choice do I have? You can't make someone love you, Rach. Trust me, I've tried. Have you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been letting Natalie walk all over you for years. That stung because it was probably true. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped fighting for what I wanted and started just trying to keep the peace. It was easier to give in than to deal with Natalie's sulking when she didn't get her way. Maybe, I admitted, but it's too late now. Is it? Before I could answer, Rachel's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and frowned. Speaking of your wife, Lucy just posted something interesting. She showed me the screen. Lucy Martinez had been Natalie's best friend since college, and she treated social media like her own personal gossip column. The post was a photo of me and Rachel on the porch, taken from the road with a telephoto lens. The caption read, "Spotted. Ethan Price having dinner with Rachel Chen." Interesting timing, considering certain recent developments. Just saying. That manipulative little... Rachel started. It's fine, I said, though something cold was settling in my stomach. Let them talk. But it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. In a town like Millbrook, gossip spread faster than wildfire, and Lucy had just lit the match. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing with texts from mutual friends, all asking variations of the same question. Was I cheating on Natalie? The irony was suffocating. I should go, I said, standing up. Don't let them chase you away, Ethan. You have every right to have dinner with an old friend. Do I? Because according to the court of public opinion, I'm apparently the villain in this story. Rachel stood up and put her hand on my arm. Then maybe it's time to stop caring what other people think. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted tonight. For months, I'd been playing defense, trying to save a marriage that was already over. Maybe it was time to try a different strategy. Maybe it was time to play offense. The next morning brought a text from Natalie. We need to talk. Meet me at Danny's garage at 2 p.m. Danny's garage. Of course. He'd inherited Morrison Auto from his father and turned it into one of those hipster car shops that charge premium prices for vintage restorations. The kind of place where rich guys brought their midlife crisis cars to feel young again. I arrived exactly on time, because punctuality was one of those habits that died hard. The garage smelled like motor oil and male ego, and I could hear classic rock playing from speakers that had seen better decades. Danny was waiting for me in the main bay, leaning against a restored 1967 Mustang like he was posing for a magazine cover. He'd aged well, I had to admit. Still had that lean build and easy smile that had made him popular in college. Still dressed like he was trying to audition for a role as the cool mechanic in a romantic comedy. Ethan, he said, extending a hand that was just clean enough to be insulting. Good to see you, man. I shook his hand and tried not to think about where it had been. Danny, nice place you've got here. Thanks. Built it from nothing after I got back from California. Sometimes you have to go away to appreciate what you had, you know? The subtext was about as subtle as a brick through a window. Natalie emerged from the office, looking nervous and defiant at the same time. She'd dressed carefully, jeans that hugged her curves, a sweater that brought out her eyes, hair styled like she was going to a photo shoot instead of destroying her marriage. Thanks for coming, she said. Wouldn't miss it. It's not every day your wife holds a summit meeting with her new boyfriend to discuss the terms of your divorce. Danny stepped forward, and I could see his jaw tighten. Look, man, I know this is awkward, but we're all adults here. Are we? Because from where I'm standing, this looks like two people who couldn't be bothered to end one relationship before starting another. It's not like that, Natalie said. Then what is it like, Nat? Because I'm having trouble understanding the timeline here. You had coffee with Danny on Tuesday. You told me you were leaving me on Wednesday. You spent the night at Lucy's, but your car was parked outside this garage until 2 a.m. so please enlighten me about what it's actually like. The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. Danny looked uncomfortable for the first time since I'd arrived, and Natalie's face had gone pale. How did you, she started. Find my iPhone, remember? We're still on the same family plan. Amazing what technology can tell you about the people you trust. Danny stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his height advantage. Maybe you should back off, Ethan. Natalie doesn't need this kind of harassment. Harassment? I'm her husband, or was until yesterday. Forgive me if I'm still adjusting to the new normal. You don't own her. No, but I thought I knew her. Turns out I was wrong about that. I looked at Natalie, really looked at her, and saw a stranger wearing my wife's face. 8 years, Nat. 8 years of building a life together, and you threw it away for what? The chance to relive your college fantasies with a man who already broke your heart once? People change, she said quietly. You're right. They do. I just never thought you'd change into someone who could lie to my face for weeks while you figured out your exit strategy. Danny moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne and see the challenge in his eyes. I think you should leave. This is a public business, Danny. I have every right to be here. Not if you're threatening people. Threatening? I haven't threatened anyone. But since you brought it up, let me be clear about something. You want my wife? Take her. You want my house, my car, half of everything I've worked for? The lawyers will sort that out. But don't stand there and pretend you're the good guy in this story. You're just a middle-aged man who couldn't make his own marriage work, so you decided to destroy mine instead. I turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Danny, next time you want to have a private conversation with someone's wife, you might want to make sure the windows to your office are closed. Sound carries further than you think. I walked out of that garage with my head held high and my hands steady, but inside I was shaking with rage. Not just at Danny, but at myself. For being naive enough to trust. For being weak enough to hope. For being stupid enough to think that love was enough to keep someone who had already decided to leave. But as I drove home through the tree-lined streets of Millbrook, something else was growing alongside the anger. A cold, calculating fury that felt almost foreign. For 8 years, I'd been the accommodating husband, the peacekeeper, the one who bent over backward to avoid conflict. Maybe it was time to try a different approach. The call came at 7 a.m. on Saturday. Mike Henderson, my best friend since college, my best man, the guy I'd helped move 3 times and loaned $5,000 to when his startup was failing. We need to talk, he said, and his voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to deliver bad news. Let me guess, you heard about Natalie. Among other things. Can you meet me at Brewster's? Bring Tom if he's free. Tom Walsh was the third member of our little group, a former Marine who worked in cybersecurity and had never met a problem he couldn't solve with either technology or violence. If Mike was calling in both of us, this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. Brewster's Coffee was the kind of place where Millbrook's professional class went to see and be seen. Exposed brick walls, overpriced lattes, and enough ambient noise to cover serious conversations. Mike had claimed a corner table, and his expression when I walked in told me everything I needed to know. Tom arrived 5 minutes later, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. We'd all been friends for 15 years, but lately our group dynamics had shifted. Mike had married Jennifer, a social climber who thought she was too good for our little town. Tom was dating Sarah, a lawyer who specialized in making men's lives miserable during divorce proceedings. And me? I was apparently the cautionary tale they used to remind themselves how not to handle marriage problems. So, Mike said after we'd ordered coffee that cost more than most people's lunch, want to tell us what really happened with Natalie? She fell back in love with her college boyfriend. She's leaving me. That's pretty much the whole story. And Rachel? Tom asked. What about Rachel? Come on, man. Lucy's been posting all over social media about you two having romantic dinners while your wife was staying at her place. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Lucy's been posting what? Mike pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. 3 posts from the last 2 days, each one more inflammatory than the last. Photos of me and Rachel at dinner, speculation about how long we'd been secretly seeing each other, and implications that I'd been cheating on Natalie for months. This is bullshit, I said. Rachel's been my friend for 20 years. I had dinner with her the night after Natalie told me she was leaving me for another man. That's not how it looks, Tom said. Since when do you care how things look? Since our wives started asking questions about what kind of man we're friends with. The words hit me like a physical blow. Are you serious right now? Mike leaned forward, his voice dropping to that reasonable tone he used when he was trying to manage a crisis. Look, Ethan, we've been friends for a long time, but this situation with Natalie, the stuff with Rachel, The way you handled things at the garage yesterday. What about the garage? Danny called Jennifer last night. Said you showed up and threatened him. I didn't threaten anyone. I told him exactly what I thought of a man who breaks up marriages for sport. He said you were aggressive, intimidating, that Natalie was scared. I stared at my oldest friend and realized I was looking at a stranger. And you believed him? I don't know what to believe anymore. The Ethan I know doesn't track his wife's phone or show up at her boyfriend's workplace for confrontations. The Ethan you know never had his wife cheat on him and then try to rewrite history to make him the villain. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Look, maybe you should talk to someone, a counselor or something. This whole situation has you acting like what? Like someone we don't recognize. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. These were the men who'd stood beside me at my wedding, who'd celebrated my promotions, who'd been there through every major moment of my adult life. And now they were sitting across from me like I was a stranger they needed to manage. So what is this? I asked. An intervention? It's us trying to help you before you do something you'll regret, Mike said. Something I'll regret. Like what? Like trusting my wife? Like believing my friends would have my back when everything fell apart? We do have your back, Tom said. But we can't support you if you're going to... Going to what? Fight back? Stand up for myself? Refuse to just roll over and let everyone walk all over me? I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee on the table. You want to know what I regret? I regret thinking that loyalty meant something. I regret believing that 15 years of friendship would count for more than whatever lies Danny and Natalie have been spreading around town. Ethan, don't do this, Mike said. Do what? Tell the truth? Stop pretending that I'm the problem here? You're making this harder than it has to be. No, Mike. You're making this exactly as hard as it has to be. You and Tom and everyone else who's decided that it's easier to blame me than to admit that sometimes good people get screwed over by the people they trust. I walked out of Brewster's Coffee knowing that I'd just lost the last two people in Millbrook who were supposed to be on my side. The betrayal felt worse than Natalie's somehow. I'd known my marriage was in trouble, but I'd never imagined that my oldest friends would abandon me the moment things got complicated. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Saw Mike's wife at the grocery store. She wouldn't even make eye contact. What's going on? I typed back. War, and we're losing. But as I pulled into my driveway and looked at the house I'd bought with Natalie, the house we'd planned to fill with children and memories and all the dreams that seemed so naive now, I realized something important. I might be losing, but the game wasn't over yet. Lucy's latest post appeared on my phone at 6:47 a.m. on Monday morning, complete with a photo she'd somehow taken through my kitchen window. Some people handle rejection better than others, praying for healing and peace for everyone involved. Toxic masculinity. Know the signs. I stared at the screen, coffee growing cold in my hand, and felt something snap inside my chest. Not break, snap, like a rubber band stretched too far, releasing all its stored energy at once. The comments were already rolling in. Women I barely knew offering support to poor Natalie. Men I'd considered acquaintances making jokes about crazy ex-husbands. My neighbor Mrs. Patterson, who I'd helped with her groceries for 3 years, posting crying face emojis and saying she'd always sensed something off about him. I screenshot everything. Then I did something I'd never done before. I fought back. My response was simple, factual, and devastating. Interesting perspective from someone who helped coordinate my wife's affair. The real story might surprise you. Stay tuned. Within an hour, my phone was exploding. Lucy's post had been shared 47 times. Mine had been shared 63 times and climbing. The comments section looked like a digital battleground, with people taking sides based on nothing more than gossip and speculation. Natalie called at 9:15 a.m., her voice shrill with panic. What the hell are you doing? Defending myself. Novel concept, I know. You can't just post things like that. People will believe you. God forbid people believe the truth. It's not the truth. I never cheated on you. Really? So what do you call spending the night at Danny's garage before you told me you were leaving? What do you call 3 months of secret phone calls and deleted text messages? What do you call lying to my face every day while you planned your exit strategy? I was confused. I was trying to figure out my feelings. You were cheating. There's a difference. She hung up on me, but the damage was already done. By noon, the Turjan Millbrook drama was trending locally, and everyone with an opinion was weighing in. The narrative was shifting, slowly but surely, from poor abandoned wife to maybe there's more to this story. At 2 p.m., I got a call from Jennifer, Mike's wife. Her voice had that fake sweet tone that meant she was about to deliver poison wrapped in concern. Ethan, I think we need to talk. Do we? This social media thing is getting out of hand. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? Or am I just refusing to be the scapegoat in everyone else's story? Mike's worried about you. We all are. Mike made his position clear on Saturday. He's chosen his side. There don't have to be sides. Tell that to your friend Lucy. Tell that to Danny and Natalie. Tell that to everyone who decided I was guilty before they bothered to ask what actually happened. You're being paranoid. Am I? Then explain why Tom's wife crossed the street to avoid talking to me yesterday. Explain why the barista at Brewster's wouldn't make eye contact this morning. Explain why my own friends ambushed me with an intervention based on lies told by a man who's sleeping with my wife. Jennifer's voice got sharper. Maybe because you're acting like a crazy person. Or maybe because you're all cowards who'd rather blame me than admit that sometimes the victim isn't the one who looks most sympathetic. I hung up and immediately posted another update. Fascinating how quickly friends turn on you when standing up for yourself becomes inconvenient for their social circle. The truth doesn't change based on popular opinion. This one got shared 96 times in the first hour. By evening, the battle lines were drawn. Team Natalie consisted of Lucy, Jennifer, most of the women in our social circle, and anyone who preferred their drama with clear villains and sympathetic victims. Team Ethan was smaller but growing, made up mostly of people who'd been through messy divorces themselves and recognized the signs of a narrative being manipulated. Rachel called at 8 p.m., her voice tight with controlled anger. They got to my business page. What? Lucy and her friends. They're posting fake reviews saying I facilitate adultery, and that couples shouldn't stay here because I break up marriages. I've lost 3 bookings already. The rage that hit me was white-hot and pure. Going after me was one thing. Going after Rachel, who'd done nothing but offer friendship to someone who needed it, was something else entirely. I'm sorry, Rach. This is my fault. No, it's not. It's theirs, and I'm not backing down. You shouldn't have to deal with this. Neither should you. But here we are. After we hung up, I sat in my empty house surrounded by the ghosts of my marriage and made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week ago. If they wanted a war, I'd give them one. But I was going to fight it on my terms, with my weapons and by my rules, and I was going to win. Tuesday morning, I did something I'd never done in 8 years of marriage. I hired a private investigator. Marcus Webb looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for a small-town PI. Rumpled suit, coffee-stained tie, eyes that had seen too much and believed too little. His office above the hardware store smelled like cigarettes and disappointment, but his reputation was solid. Cheating spouse? He asked before I'd even sat down. Among other things. I laid out everything, the timeline of Natalie's affair, Danny's history, Lucy's social media campaign, the way my friends had turned on me based on carefully crafted lies. Marcus took notes in a shorthand that looked like hieroglyphics. What do you want from me? The truth. All of it. Phone records, financial records, anything that proves what really happened and when. That's not cheap. I don't care what it costs. He quoted me a number that made me wince, but I wrote the check anyway. Sometimes justice has a price tag, and I was finally ready to pay it. While Marcus worked his magic, I started my own investigation. 8 years of marriage had taught me Natalie's patterns, her habits, her weaknesses. I knew she kept a journal in her design studio. I knew she saved every email and text message because she was paranoid about losing client communications. I knew she backed everything up to a cloud storage account that we'd set up together years ago. Most importantly, I knew she'd never bothered to change any of her passwords. What I found in those files was better than I dared to hope. 3 months of messages between Natalie and Danny, starting with innocent reminiscing and escalating to explicit photos and detailed plans for their future together. Screenshots of conversations where they laughed about how naive I was, how easy it would be to paint me as the villain, how they could manipulate the narrative to make Natalie look like the victim of an emotionally abusive marriage. But the real treasure was a voice recording from 2 weeks ago. A conversation between Natalie and Lucy where they planned the entire social media campaign, every post, every photo, every carefully crafted lie designed to destroy my reputation and isolate me from my friends. The key is making him look unstable, Natalie's voice said through my laptop speakers. If people think he's dangerous, they'll side with me automatically. What about Rachel? Lucy's voice asked. Collateral damage. She should have stayed out of it. I listened to that recording 3 times, and each time I felt a little more of my old self die. The man who'd loved Natalie unconditionally, who'd trusted his friends implicitly, who'd believed that good people were rewarded and bad people faced consequences. That man was gone forever. In his place was someone harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. Marcus called Thursday afternoon with preliminary results. Your wife's been planning this for months. The affair started in January, not last week. She's been moving money to accounts you don't have access to. And her boyfriend? He's got a history of this. 3 other marriages broken up in the last 10 years. Always the same pattern. What pattern? He targets unhappy wives, love bombs them until they leave their husbands, then moves on to the next conquest once the excitement wears off. Your wife is just his latest project. The irony was almost funny. Natalie thought she was getting her happily ever after with her college sweetheart, but she was actually just the newest victim in Danny's long-running game of emotional manipulation. There's more, Marcus continued. The social media campaign against you? It's coordinated. Lucy's been paid to post specific content at specific times. Someone's funding this operation. Who? Still working on that. But whoever it is, they want you destroyed completely. This isn't just about a divorce. This is about annihilation. After Marcus hung up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the evidence spread across my table like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. For months, I'd been playing defense against an opponent I didn't even know existed. I'd been trying to save a marriage that had already been murdered, fighting for friends who'd already been turned against me, defending myself against accusations that had been carefully crafted to be impossible to disprove. But now I knew the truth, all of it, and more importantly, I had proof. It was time to stop playing defense. It was time to burn it all down. Friday night, I invited everyone to a party. Not just anyone, everyone, every person who'd taken sides in this war, every friend who'd abandoned me, every social media warrior who'd shared Lucy's posts and added their own commentary. I sent the invitations through Facebook, kept them vague and intriguing. Time to clear the air. Saturday, 7 p.m., my place. Come hungry for truth. The responses were immediate and predictable. Mike and Tom declined, saying they had other commitments. Jennifer and Sarah made excuses about prior plans. Lucy posted publicly that she wouldn't feel safe attending, but others were curious. Neighbors who'd been watching the drama unfold from the sidelines, co-workers who'd heard conflicting stories, even some of Natalie's friends who were starting to have doubts about the narrative they'd been fed. Rachel was the first to RSVP yes. Whatever you're planning, I'm in. By Saturday afternoon, I had confirmations from 15 people. Not a huge crowd, but enough. Quality over quantity. I spent the day preparing, and not just with food and drinks. I set up my laptop, connected it to the big screen TV in the living room, and loaded up everything I'd discovered. The timeline of the affair, the screenshots of messages, the voice recording of Natalie and Lucy planning their campaign, the financial records showing money being moved to hidden accounts. Most importantly, I had Marcus's final report, delivered that morning with a smile that told me he'd found something special. Your wife's boyfriend has been busy, he'd said. Turns out he's not just a serial homewrecker. He's also been skimming money from his business, cheating on his taxes, and running a side operation selling stolen car parts. The FBI's been building a case against him for 6 months. The FBI? Auto theft ring. Your boy Danny's been the local connection, using his legitimate garage to move stolen vehicles and parts. They're planning to arrest him Monday morning. The pieces clicked into place with almost audible satisfaction. Danny wasn't just destroying my marriage for sport. He was doing it because he needed to disappear, and taking someone else's wife was the perfect cover for a man about to become a federal fugitive. The party started at 7 p.m. sharp. People arrived in small groups, curious but cautious, like they were attending a funeral where they weren't sure if they should offer condolences or congratulations. I played the perfect host for the first hour. Drinks, appetizers, small talk about everything except the elephant in the room. I wanted everyone comfortable, relaxed, their guard down. At 8 p.m., I called for attention. Thank you all for coming, I said, standing in front of the TV with a remote control in my hand. I know the last few weeks have been interesting. Lots of stories floating around, lots of opinions about what happened and who's to blame. I thought it was time you heard the truth. The room went silent. I could see people shifting in their seats, some looking excited, others looking like they wanted to leave. For those of you who've been following Lucy's social media campaign, you know that I'm supposedly an abusive husband who drove his wife into the arms of another man through my toxic behavior. You know that I'm unstable, dangerous, and probably shouldn't be trusted around decent people. A few uncomfortable laughs from the audience. The thing about stories, I continued, is that they're only as good as the evidence that supports them. So tonight, I thought I'd share some evidence of my own. I clicked the remote, and the first screenshot appeared on the TV. A text message from Natalie to Danny, dated 3 months ago. He's working late again. Perfect time for you to come over. The room erupted in whispers and gasps. I let them process it, then clicked to the next image, and the next. A steady progression of messages that told the real story. Months of planning, careful manipulation, and calculated betrayal. "This is private," someone called out. "You shouldn't be sharing this." "You're right," I said. "Private messages should stay private, just like private marriages should stay private. But when people decide to make my personal life a public spectacle, when they coordinate social media campaigns to destroy my reputation, when they turn my friends against me with carefully crafted lies, then privacy becomes a luxury I can't afford." I clicked to the voice recording. Natalie's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "The key is making him look unstable. If people think he's dangerous, they'll side with me automatically." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see people looking at each other, processing what they'd just heard, realizing how completely they'd been manipulated. "There's more," I said, and clicked to Marcus's report. "Turns out Danny Morrison isn't just a homewrecker. He's also a federal criminal. The FBI will be arresting him Monday morning for his involvement in an auto theft ring. Natalie didn't just leave me for her college boyfriend. She left me for a man who's about to spend the next 10 years in federal prison." The room exploded, people talking over each other, asking questions, demanding to know if it was true. I let the chaos build for a moment, then raised my hand for silence. "I know some of you feel bad right now. Some of you are realizing that you judged me without knowing the facts, that you abandoned a friend based on lies, that you participated in destroying an innocent person's reputation. That's a hard thing to face." I looked directly at the people who'd hurt me most, neighbors who'd crossed the street to avoid me, co-workers who'd made jokes at my expense, friends of friends who'd shared Lucy's posts without question. "But here's the thing about truth," I said. "It doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care about social media narratives or popular opinion or who makes the most sympathetic victim. It just is. And now you know what it is." I turned off the TV and set down the remote. "There's food in the kitchen and drinks on the counter. Stay as long as you want. Leave whenever you're ready. But remember this moment the next time someone asks you to choose sides in a story you don't fully understand." The party broke up slowly, people leaving in small groups, some stopping to apologize, others too embarrassed to make eye contact. By 10 p.m., only Rachel remained, helping me clean up the debris of my destroyed social life. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it for a moment, taking inventory of the emotions swirling through my chest. "Free," I said finally. "For the first time in months, I feel free." "What happens now?" I smiled, and it felt like the first genuine smile I'd managed in weeks. Now we watch it all burn down. Monday morning brought chaos. Danny's arrest made the local news, federal agents raiding Morrison Auto at dawn, finding stolen cars and parts worth over $2 million, arresting the owner and 3 employees on charges that would put them away for decades. By 10 a.m., every major social media platform was buzzing with the story. The same people who'd been sharing Lucy's posts about my toxic behavior were now sharing news articles about my wife's criminal boyfriend. Natalie called at 10:47 a.m., sobbing hysterically. "I didn't know," she kept saying. "I swear I didn't know about any of it." "Didn't know what? That he was a criminal? Or that he was using you as cover while he planned his escape?" "Either. Both. None of this was supposed to happen." "What was supposed to happen, Nat? You'd run away with Danny and live happily ever after while I picked up the pieces of the life you destroyed?" "I loved him." "No, you loved the idea of him. You loved the fantasy of being rescued from your boring marriage by your exciting college boyfriend. You never bothered to find out who he really was." "What am I going to do?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. What was she going to do? Her lover was going to federal prison. Her reputation was in ruins. Her friends were abandoning her as quickly as they'd abandoned me. The money she'd hidden in secret accounts would probably be seized as proceeds from criminal activity. "I don't know, Nat, but it's not my problem anymore. Please, I made a mistake. I know that now. Can't we try to work this out?" "Work what out? The affair? The lies? The campaign to destroy my reputation? The fact that you threw away 8 years of marriage for a man who was planning to disappear and leave you holding the bag? I'm sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry your plan backfired. You're sorry the man you thought would save you turned out to be worse than the husband you threw away. But you're not sorry for what you did to me. You're just sorry it didn't work." I hung up and blocked her number. The rest of the week was a masterclass in social dynamics. Lucy's influence evaporated overnight. Hard to maintain credibility when your entire narrative collapses in the face of federal indictments. People who'd shared her posts were quietly deleting them, hoping no one would remember their participation in the character assassination. Mike called Wednesday afternoon, his voice carefully neutral. "Hey man, thought I should check in." "Should you?" "Look, I know things got heated last week. Maybe we overreacted." "Maybe?" "Okay, we definitely overreacted. We should have listened to your side of the story." "My side of the story?" "Mike, there was only one side of the story, the truth. Everything else was just propaganda." "I know that now." "Do you? Or do you just know that backing the wrong horse made you look stupid?" The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Finally, Mike said, "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. There's nothing you can say that will change what happened. You abandoned me when I needed you most, based on lies told by people who were actively trying to destroy my life. That's not the kind of mistake you apologize for, Mike. That's the kind of mistake that ends friendships. It doesn't have to." "Yes, it does. Because I'll never trust you again, and friendship without trust is just an elaborate form of pretending." Tom tried a similar conversation Thursday evening, with similar results. These weren't men who'd made innocent mistakes. They were men who'd chosen convenience over loyalty, popular opinion over truth, social comfort over moral courage. The fact that they'd been wrong didn't change what their choices revealed about their character. By Friday, the transformation was complete. People who'd crossed the street to avoid me were now nodding politely when we passed. Co-workers who'd made jokes at my expense were now treating me with careful respect. The barista at Brewster's Coffee was making eye contact again, but it was too late for politeness, too late for careful respect, too late for the kind of social rehabilitation that pretended the last month hadn't happened. I'd learned something valuable about the people in my life, and about myself. I'd learned that most people prefer comfortable lies to difficult truths. I'd learned that loyalty is a rare commodity, and that most of what passes for friendship is actually just social convenience. Most importantly, I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. Strong enough to stand alone when everyone abandoned me, strong enough to fight back when they tried to destroy me, strong enough to burn down everything I'd built rather than accept the role of victim in someone else's story. Saturday morning, I got a call from Marcus with the final piece of the puzzle. "Found out who was funding Lucy's campaign," he said. "Who?" "Danny's ex-wife, the one from California. Turns out she's been tracking his pattern for years, documenting his victims, building a case. She hired Lucy to destroy your reputation because she wanted to make sure Danny's new relationship imploded before he could disappear." "She was trying to help me?" "In her own twisted way. She figured if she could turn everyone against you, Natalie would realize what she was giving up and come back. Meanwhile, she was feeding information to the FBI about Danny's criminal activities." The irony was perfect. I'd been caught in the crossfire of someone else's revenge plot. Collateral damage in a war I didn't even know was being fought. But instead of being destroyed by it, I'd used it to expose the truth about everyone in my life. "There's one more thing," Marcus said. "Danny's talking. Trying to cut a deal with the feds. He's claiming Natalie knew about the stolen cars, that she helped him launder money through her design business." "Did she?" "Probably not. But it doesn't matter what's true anymore. It matters what he can convince them is true." After Marcus hung up, I sat in my kitchen, looking out at the autumn leaves falling in my backyard, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness. That would come later, maybe, with time and distance and the slow process of rebuilding a life worth living. But peace. The deep, quiet satisfaction of a man who'd fought for the truth and won. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Dinner tonight? I'm cooking." I typed back, "Perfect. I'll bring wine." As I got ready to leave my empty house, I realized that I wasn't the same man who'd sat at this kitchen table a month ago, listening to his wife confess her affair. That man had been weak, accommodating, desperate to preserve relationships that were already poisoned. This man was something different. Harder, maybe, definitely lonelier, but also free in a way I'd never been before. Free from the need to be liked by people who didn't deserve my friendship. Free from the obligation to save a marriage that had been murdered by the person who'd sworn to protect it. Free from the illusion that being good was enough to protect you from people who chose to be evil. I locked the door behind me and walked toward my car, toward Rachel's cottage, toward whatever came next. The autumn air was crisp and clean, full of the promise of winter and the distant hope of spring. Behind me, my old life lay in ruins. Ahead of me, something new was waiting to be built, and for the first time in months, I was looking forward to finding out what that something might be.